Have you ever noticed that the brighter you become, the more certain faces around you begin to darken? It is a truth that feels like a betrayal. You spend years cultivating kindness, tending to your empathy like a sacred garden, only to find that some people seem inexplicably unsettled by your presence. Their smiles are polite, their words are civil, yet beneath them runs a quiet undercurrent of resistance, sometimes even hostility. This is not random misfortune. It is not the universe punishing you for being gentle. It is a deeper law of the psyche, one that Carl Jung hinted at in his work on the shadow, and it is woven into the mythic fabric of every soul's journey. To shine is to awaken, and to awaken is to disturb the sleeping. There are people who enter a room and shift its very temperature without saying a word. Gaspon word, not because they demand attention, but because they are attention. The kind that bypasses the mind and lands straight in the chest, making the air feel suddenly heavier or lighter. You, the empath, are such a presence. You are not merely a listener of words, but of currents. The unspoken tremor in someone's voice, the way their eyes flicker when truth brushes too close, the quiet contraction of energy when something is being hidden. To stand before you is to stand before a mirror that cannot be fogged. This is why people feel both drawn to you and uneasy in your company. Your openness is not weakness, it is a force of nature. It invites, but it also exposes. You carry no agenda to unmask others, yet your very being reveals them, the warmth of their unguarded moments, and the shadows they have pressed deep into silence. Some will call you kind, others will call you intense. Both are true, but what they often cannot articulate is the sensation of being seen upon fully without the usual camouflage of small talk or polite distance. This is the gift and the burden of the empath as mirror. You reflect back not just beauty, but also the fractures beneath it. And for those unready to face those fractures, your light is not received as blessing, but as intrusion. Still, the mirror cannot choose what it reflects. Its only choice is whether to remain clear or to distort itself for the comfort of the viewer. And for the empath, clarity is the essence of truth. Before psychology had a name for it, the ancients spoke of it in myths and sacred tales, the strange, repeating fate of those who carry light. In every age, across every culture, there is a figure who arrives bearing something luminous, a gift, a truth, a fire. And in every age, the same figure is welcomed by some and hunted by others. Think of Prometheus, who defied the gods to bring fire to humankind, a fire that symbolized knowledge, vision, and the power to transform. Humanity was warmed, fed, and illuminated by it. Yet Prometheus himself was chained to the rock, his liver devoured daily in an endless punishment. Or think of Christ, whose message was compassion and truth, met with open arms by those desperate for healing, and with brutal rejection by those whose positions depended on the shadows remaining unlit. These are not distant legends. They are mirrors for a psychic reality that still plays out in the subtle theater of everyday life. When you, the empath, step forward in your own quiet way, you enact a smaller but no less real version of this archetype. You carry an energy, hard-won from your own suffering, that others can sense before you speak a word. For those longing for warmth, your presence feels like the first sunrise after a long winter. For those who have built their identity in shadow, your light is like the noonday sun, too revealing, too direct, impossible to ignore. In Jungian terms, this is the confrontation between the self and the shadow. The self in its wholeness is luminous by nature. The shadow in its repression survives by concealment. To encounter the self, even in the form of another human being, is to be called into a transformation that the ego may resist with all its strength. And so the archetypal story repeats. The light bearer appears, and the field around them polarizes. Allies draw near, adversaries rise up, and those who are undecided linger at the edge, uncertain whether to step closer or retreat. This is not a personal failing on your part. It is the ancient choreography of light and shadow, a dance older than memory, woven into the human condition itself. In dreams, this archetype often announces itself through symbols: a solitary traveler carrying a lantern across a wasteland, a radiant child pursued by a faceless crowd, a candle burning in the depths of a cave, drawing moths and bats alike. Each of these is a psychic reminder that light cannot arrive without also awakening darkness. This is why your life, as an empath, often feels like walking with a torch through an invisible wilderness. You know that some will approach you in reverence, grateful for the illumination. Others will try to snuff out your flame, not out of inherent evil, but because the light forces them to see what they have sworn never to look at. In the deepest sense, your task is not to make everyone welcome your torch, for that is impossible, but to keep carrying it. The archetype asks not for universal approval, but for constancy. Prometheus did not regret stealing fire, though it cost him dearly. The Christ archetype did not abandon compassion, even as betrayal closed in. To embody this archetype is to accept a paradox. The gift you carry will save some and threaten others. But to hide it would betray both yourself and the larger story you are part of. And here is the deeper truth, the one most people miss. The adversary in the archetype is not truly the enemy. They are the catalyst. They force the bearer of light to strengthen their grip on the torch, to clarify why they carry it, to understand the weight of its fire. Without resistance, the light bearer's role remains untested, undefined. With it, the role becomes destiny. There is a peculiar discomfort that settles over a room when the mirror becomes too clear. It does not announce itself loudly. It moves in whispers, in sidelong glances, in the faint tightening of a jaw. And you, the empath, feel it before a single word is spoken. Projection is one of the oldest defense mechanisms in the human psyche. Carl Jung called it the unconscious transfer of our own unacknowledged qualities onto another. When someone looks at you and sees too much, they are often seeing a part of themselves they have hidden away. Your kindness, your openness, your emotional fluency, these do not simply register as good traits in the other. They also shine an unflinching light on the gap between who they are and who they wish they could be. And that light, in certain hearts, becomes unbearable. In their inner dialogue, your presence says you are not living your truth. You never say these words aloud, yet the message rings in their bones because your authenticity exposes the pretense they cling to. They begin to feel small, not because you have diminished them, but because the contrast between you and their constructed mask is too stark. The psyche, when cornered, seeks escape. And projection is a swift and invisible exit. It whispers to them, "It's not me, it's you." You become the too sensitive one, the too emotional one, the too intense one. Your depth becomes their accusation. Your compassion becomes their judgment. In reality, the mirror is neutral. It reflects beauty and fracture alike, without preference. But a person who cannot face their own fractures will smash the mirror rather than meet their own eyes. This is why some people recoil from you while others lean in. It is why one person might describe you as a blessing and another as a burden, sometimes within the same week. You are not a fixed identity in their eyes. You are a projection screen for the parts of themselves they cannot hold. The danger here is subtle but profound. If you are unaware of projection, you might begin to believe their version of you. Their discomfort becomes your guilt. Their resentment becomes your flaw. And slowly, without realizing it, you dim your light to soften their gaze. But the work of the empath is not to change the reflection in the mirror to make others comfortable. It is to keep the mirror clean and true. For when the time comes that they are ready to face themselves, the clarity you preserved will be the gift they remember. Projection is not inherently malicious. It is a primitive attempt to protect the fragile sense of self. The tragedy is that it often turns potential connection into quiet warfare. One person reaches for authenticity, the other retreats behind the armor of accusation. And so you must learn to see it without absorbing it. The resentment in their eyes is not a verdict against you. It is an echo of the battle they are waging within. Your role is not to fight that battle for them nor to join it. Your role is to remain grounded in your own truth, to recognize that the accusation is a shadow wearing your face. In time, some will return to you with softened voices, ready to claim the parts of themselves they once rejected. Others may never return, but in either case, you will have kept your clarity intact. And that, for the light bearer, is the victory that matters. No one becomes a healer by accident. The path begins not in light but in darkness, in the long corridors of suffering that only the soul remembers. You, the empath, did not awaken with your heart wide open because life spared you. You learned the language of pain because you were fluent in it long before you could name it. You learned to listen because no one else truly listened to you. You learned to carry light because you once knew what it was to be without it. This is the paradox of the wounded healer archetype. The very experiences that should have closed you off instead carved you open. Every scar became a doorway, every loss a strange and unwelcome teacher. And without realizing it, you began to carry something, an invisible medicine, in the way you looked at people, in the patience you gave their silences, in the way your presence seemed to steady their shaking hands. But here lies the danger. That same light distilled from your own trials draws not only those ready to be healed, but also those who only wish to take without giving. Some approach with gratitude. Others arrive with a hunger that cannot be satisfied, hoping to drink endlessly from your well. And because you have walked through the fire, you often do not turn them away. You recognize their pain. You feel its echo in your bones. You think, if I survived, perhaps I can help them survive too. This impulse is noble, and yet it is how many wounded healers burn themselves to ash. The truth is this: your pain taught you empathy, but it did not make you responsible for saving everyone. The medicine you carry is potent, but it is not meant for every hand that reaches for it. Some will misuse it, some will reject it, some will try to own it, to possess you as if you were the source rather than the channel. You must learn what the archetype demands: to give without depleting, to heal without erasing yourself. The wounded healer is not the eternal martyr. They are the survivor who has learned to walk with their own wounds intact, using them as instruments of understanding rather than chains of obligation. This means sometimes letting others walk their own road through the dark, even if you could guide them. It means understanding that your role is not to carry everyone across the threshold, but to stand at the doorway, offering the light for those who choose to step forward themselves. If you refuse this truth, you risk becoming the very thing your light opposes: a prisoner, bound by the needs of others, unable to tend to your own flame. And here is the transformation. When the wounded healer accepts their own boundaries, they become not just a comfort for others, but an example. They show that it is possible to suffer and still remain whole, to carry pain and still remain free. That is the medicine the world needs most, not your exhaustion, but your wholeness. It is a question that slips into the empath's mind during quiet moments, when the noise of the world fades and the ache beneath the ribs makes itself known. Why does my light draw not only love, but also quiet hostility? The answer lies partly in your nature and partly in what others see when they look at you. An empath's energy does not move through the world neutrally. It stirs things. It calls buried emotions to the surface, forces old wounds to pulse again, and reminds people of the truths they have worked hard to bury. You become a living catalyst, whether you intend it or not. But there is a deeper layer: what you believe about your role in the world. Many empaths have carried, since childhood, an unspoken contract. I will take care of your pain if it means I am allowed to stay close. You were praised for being understanding, but scolded when your sensitivity made others uncomfortable. You learned to bend, to soften, to give endlessly without asking for equal return. This silent agreement becomes a beacon to those who are unwilling to face themselves. They sense, perhaps without language for it, that you will carry what they refuse to hold. They come to you not to grow, but to offload. And when your light makes their own shadow stir, they do not thank you. They resent you. It is a paradox. They are drawn to the warmth of your fire, yet the illumination that comes with it makes them flinch. The same person who comes to you for comfort may later bristle at the discomfort you awaken. You become, in their mind, both sanctuary and threat. And here is where the resentment sharpens. The unconscious dislikes debt. When someone feels they have received something they cannot repay, whether it is compassion, forgiveness, or emotional shelter, they may turn that gratitude into suspicion. They begin to imagine you are using your light to control them or to place yourself above them. They do not see the truth, that you gave without calculation. This is why resentment often follows the empath. not because you are manipulative, but because you disrupt the emotional economy people are used to. You give without demand, but they feel the weight of what they cannot reciprocate. Their pride aches, their shadow stirs, and somewhere deep inside, the easiest path is to decide, it's your fault. Without awareness, this cycle repeats. You wonder what you've done wrong. They retreat, quietly hostile. You give again to prove you meant no harm. The resentment deepens. The way out is not to dim your light or give less love. It is to change the contract you have unconsciously signed. You are not here to rescue those who refuse to step toward their own healing. Your role is to stand as a light, steady, available, but not chasing. When you release the need to be indispensable, you stop attracting those who resent you for it. And this is where the power returns to you. When you no longer trade your energy for acceptance, the only ones who stay in your orbit are those who value the balance between giving and receiving. Resentment will always exist in some form. It is part of the archetypal dance between light and shadow. But it need not live in your inner circle. You can keep your fire burning without letting it be a free-for-all. And when you do, the resentment of strangers will no longer pierce you, because you will know their battle is not yours. Your empathy is not a bottomless reservoir. It is a living ecosystem. A garden grown from years of tending your own inner soil, from the storms you have survived, from the seasons of loss and renewal that have shaped you. In this garden, there are rare flowers, compassion that blooms in winter, understanding that can weather the drought of someone else's silence, a patience that grows slowly but endures for decades. The air here is different. Air here is, visitors feel it the moment they step inside. Some breathe deeper, others find themselves restless without knowing why. But here's the truth the empath must learn. Not everyone who enters your garden comes to nurture it. Some will walk softly, marveling at its beauty. Some will take only what they need, leaving the roots intact. Others will pluck without thought or trample the beds out of envy. In the early years, you may have believed it was your duty to keep the gate wide open. That generosity meant letting everyone wander freely, even if they left broken stems in their wake. But over time, the soil grew thin, the blooms fewer. You began to notice how much harder it was to bring the colors back after certain visitors passed through. This is where the fence becomes sacred. Not a fortress wall, but a living boundary. Ivy covered, with a gate that opens by choice, not by default. It is not built from suspicion, but from self-respect. The fence says, all are welcome to approach, but not all may enter, and those who enter must walk with care. In Jungian language, the fence is the conscious ego choosing to protect the self from unconscious invasion. Without it, the shadow of others, their projections, their hunger, their resentment, overgrows the garden until your own flowers are starved of light. The fence does not make you less giving. It makes your giving sustainable. Inside, the soil stays rich, the flowers vibrant. You have energy, not only for those who step through the gate with reverence, but for yourself as well. There will be those who resent the fence. They will stand outside and say you have changed, that you are no longer as open as you once were. What they mean is that you no longer allow them to take without tending. It is not cruelty to turn them away. It is wisdom. Because a garden without boundaries is not generosity, it is neglect. Neglect of the very source from which your light grows. The deeper lesson is this: you do not have to explain your fence. The health of your garden is proof enough. And the ones meant to be there will understand instinctively that the fence is not to keep them out, but to keep the beauty alive for when they arrive. Your task is to tend both, the blooms within and the threshold that guards them. In doing so, you ensure your garden will still be here tomorrow, and the day after, and for many seasons to come. For so long, you have seen yourself as the one who heals, the one who feels, the one who brings light where there is none. And much of that is true, but there is a truth even deeper. One that lives in the part of the mirror you rarely dare to turn toward yourself. You too carry a shadow. It is tempting to believe that because you sense the unspoken in others, you have mastered your own inner landscape. Yet the empath's gift can be a veil, a subtle disguise for what lies beneath. You can spend so much time reading the emotions of others that you forget to notice the resentment you've buried against yourself, for overgiving, for self-betrayal, for all the times you let someone cross a boundary you never dared to defend. And there is more. Hidden in the folds of your compassion may be a quiet fear. If I stop giving, will I still be loved? This fear can drive you to pour yourself out until you are hollow, all while convincing yourself it is selflessness. But in truth, it is a bargain struck with your own shadow, trading your energy for the illusion of security. There can also be a subtler shadow, the sense of moral high ground, the belief that your ability to feel makes you purer, wiser, somehow above those who cannot. It is rarely conscious, but others feel it. They sense the unspoken hierarchy, and it breeds the very resentment you have tried to avoid. Jung warned that the shadow does not vanish through denial. It grows stronger in the dark. The only way forward is to bring it into the light, to acknowledge that your empathy is not only a gift, but also a mask at times, one that can hide fear, pride, and unhealed wounds. To face your shadow is not to discredit your light, but to anchor it. The empath who denies their own shadow becomes fragile, easily wounded by the projections of others. The empath who integrates it becomes unshakable, able to hold light and darkness without splitting them apart. This work is uncomfortable. It means asking yourself, why do I help? Is it always love, or sometimes fear of losing connection? Do I give freely, or because I cannot bear to be seen as selfish? Do I ever use my sensitivity to avoid facing my own unresolved pain? Every honest answer is a reclamation of power. Each fragment of shadow you accept becomes fuel for your light, denser, steadier, less dependent on the approval of those around you. When you bring your own shadow into view, something remarkable happens. The resentment of others loses its sting. You see it for what it is, a mirror of the same inner conflict you have met within yourself. You no longer need to defend against it because you no longer fear its reflection. And that is the turning point. The empath's shadow is not an enemy, it is an unclaimed part of your wholeness. To bring it home is to stand in a deeper kind of light, one that does not blind others, but invites them to see. When the shadow has been met, not as an intruder, but as a long-lost companion, something begins to change. The energy that once leaked away in self-defense and overgiving now turns inward, condensing, gathering weight and brilliance. This is the stage the alchemists called transmutation, the changing of base matter into gold. But here, the gold is not metal, it is presence. The empath who integrates their own shadow becomes something different. No longer fragile light, vulnerable to every gust of resentment, but a steady flame that cannot be extinguished by passing winds. The shift is subtle yet profound. Before, the opinions of others could pierce you like arrows. Now you see them for what they are. Weather. Sometimes sunny, sometimes stormy, always changing, but never defining the mountain itself. You become like that mountain, rooted in your own ground, rising into your own sky. This is not the end of feeling. Far from it. Your sensitivity remains, but it no longer bleeds. You can step into a room thick with unspoken tension and feel it all, yet not be carried away by it. You are no longer porous in the way you once were. The emotions of others do not seep into your core. They flow around you like water around stone. In this state, resentment no longer feels like an attack. It feels like a signal. You recognize it as the psyche's resistance to change, a natural reflex when truth approaches too closely. Instead of shrinking, you simply take note. Ah, the shadow has stirred here. And then you go on being yourself. This is the sage phase of the empath's path. You have walked the labyrinth of overgiving, projection, and shadow, and emerged carrying something rarer than compassion alone, discernment. You no longer rush to fix what is not yours to fix. You no longer trade your essence for the illusion of harmony. You choose your battles, not from fear, but from clarity. In Jungian terms, you are now living more fully in the self, the archetype of wholeness. Your empathy is no longer a reflex or a compulsion. It is a conscious choice, a tool you wield rather than a force that wields you. Others sense this shift. Some will respect it. Others will test it, hoping to find the old you, the one who bent without being asked, who gave without limit. When they do, you do not harden. You simply hold your ground. No apology, no resentment, just the quiet statement of your presence. This is who I am. This is where I stand. And here is the final alchemy. The energy you once poured outward without measure now fuels your own becoming. You read, you create, you rest, you dream. Your inner garden blooms not only for visitors, but for yourself. And in tending it, you discover the greatest secret of all, that the world was never asking you to save it. It was asking you to be whole, so that in your wholeness, you might show others what is possible. This is transmutation, the turning of empathy into wisdom, of shadow into strength, of wounds into gateways through which light can enter and stay. There comes a moment when the journey of the empath stops feeling like survival and begins to feel like purpose. No longer haunted by the need to be understood, no longer drained by the attempt to save everyone, you find yourself standing with the torch in your hand, not as a burden, but as an extension of who you are. Living as a torchbearer is not about shining as brightly as possible for all to see. It is about holding the flame steadily, whether anyone notices or not. It is a discipline, a devotion, a quiet refusal to let the winds of other people's shadows determine the shape of your light. You have walked through the seasons of bending and breaking, of losing yourself to the needs of others, of facing the darkness within. Now you carry the flame not from compulsion, but from choice, and that choice makes all the difference. Some will still come to warm their hands beside your fire. Others will still try to dim it. But you no longer take either as a measure of your worth. You understand now the flame does not belong to them. It does not even belong entirely to you. It belongs to the path, to the greater story of which you are a living part. In Jungian terms, you are inhabiting the self, the fully integrated center that is neither swallowed by shadow nor blinded by light. You no longer use your empathy as a strategy to earn love or prove worth. It has become the natural atmosphere in which you live. You've learned that the torchbearer's task is not to chase the darkness away, that is impossible, but to offer a point of orientation for those ready to walk toward it. And even if they never do, the act of holding the torch changes the landscape. This way of living is quiet power. It is moving through the world without the compulsion to explain yourself, yet without hiding. It is knowing that the ones who are meant to walk beside you will see your light without you having to wave it in their faces. And when storms come, as they always do, you do not crouch over the flame in desperation. You have learned how to shield it without fear, how to let it breathe without being blown out. You walk through the wind, the rain, the whispers, the projections, and you keep moving. The torchbearer's path is not lonely as it once was. For in carrying your own flame faithfully, you begin to notice the others, across valleys, along winding roads, in unexpected places. Other lights flicker. You nod in silent recognition, and the world feels less empty. And one day, perhaps without realizing it, you will inspire someone else to pick up their own torch. Not because you convinced them, not because you carried them, but because they saw you standing in the storm and something in them whispered, if they can do it, so can I. That is the legacy of the torchbearer, not to be remembered for the light itself, but for the courage to keep it lit. When the story is finally told, it is never about the moments when the path was easy. It is about the times you walked through shadows carrying a fragile flame, uncertain if it would survive the wind, and it did. Looking back now, you see the arc not as random misfortunes, but as the necessary shaping of your being. The wounds you once thought were detours became the very roads that brought you here. The resentment you endured from others was not proof of your failure, but confirmation of your light's potency. And the shadows you faced within yourself? They were not enemies to be destroyed, but messengers guiding you to your own wholeness. You are not the same empath who began this journey. You no longer move through the world trying to convince it of your worth, nor bending yourself into shapes to keep the peace. You have learned to stand in your light without apology, to carry your flame without forcing it into unwilling hands. And yet you have not hardened. Your compassion remains, but it is now anchored in discernment. Your openness remains, but it is guarded by boundaries that keep your inner garden alive. You are no longer a mirror easily shattered. You are a mirror set in stone, clear and unwavering, reflecting both beauty and shadow with equal grace. Perhaps most importantly, you have come to see that your light was never meant to erase the darkness. It was meant to exist alongside it, to offer a point of reference for those who are ready to see. Some will be drawn to it. Some will resist. Both are part of the story. In living this way, you have become something rare, a steady presence in a world of shifting faces, a quiet flame in a landscape that often fears the light. And if the road ahead holds more storms, and it will, you already know what to do. You have walked through the worst of them before, and still the flame remains. This is where the journey lands, not in a perfect peace, but in a lasting strength, not in the absence of shadow, but in the harmony between shadow and light within you. And from this place, you will walk forward, not to save the world, but to live fully in it, torch in hand, heart unbound. If you've walked this far with me, then perhaps you've felt the echo of your own story in these words. Maybe you've carried a light that was both a gift and a burden. Maybe you felt the sting of being misunderstood, or the quiet fatigue of giving without return. This is your reminder. Your light matters, but it does not exist to prove your worth or by acceptance. It exists because it is the truest expression of who you are. And the world, whether it admits it or not, needs that truth. So hold your torch high, not in defiance, but in devotion to what is real within you. Walk your path without shrinking for those who flinch at the brightness. The ones meant for your light will find you. If this journey has resonated with you, I invite you to stay with me here. There are more roads to walk, more shadows to face, more light to tend, together. Subscribe, return, and let's keep the flame alive.